Well, hi, welcome to Inner Horizons with Rishi Khatri. My very special guest today is Sarah Hindlian-Bowler. And I just want to thank you so much for meeting with me today. And I know that you're very busy, so I appreciate you. And I've known you for a lot of years. If you can just tell us in a few words, what exactly are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Rishi. We've been friends for so long. It feels like, I don't know, I want to say 20 years. It could be getting there. And I feel like I've known you in this life, many others, and probably will know you in many future lives. Our paths always seem to cross in the most interesting and timely ways. But aside from being here and being excited to be able to speak with you, I am one of very few female financial analysts who focus on the technology sector on Wall Street. And I have a long history and background in finance, whether it was trading, whether it was sales, whether it was investment banking or research. I've had the opportunity to operate in, run, manage, and build out all of those various businesses over the course of my career. And so I'm very passionate about not just finance, but the intersection of finance and technology, which I think is just part of wanting to watch the world change and grow and be a minor figure, even in the smallest capacity, in participating how the world changes and grows. And so I think that's what really appeals to me about tech. And intellectually, I think that it's something that everybody would benefit from knowing, and it can only make you better and stronger at your work. And I think for me personally, being one of very few women in the industry, and I think the only senior female in the sector right now, it can be challenging. The environment is very male-dominated. It thinks it's progressive, but it isn't. It's actually really kind of anti-progress. And I think that I've spent my entire career, and maybe I think you and I have had conversations about how I think my head is just broken from smashing into glass ceilings. But I really truly believe that we have to continue pursuing opportunities and chances, because I don't know how to break it to people, but women are much better investors than men. And I don't mean by a little bit. I mean, women are much better investors than men, much less emotional. Our returns are significantly higher. I'm talking 3 to 6% per year for a female money manager. And, we don't get as hysterical and worked up about things. And so I feel that no matter how many times I slam my head into the glass ceiling that is certainly above me, I'm not going to stop, because there need to be more women doing this, and there need to be more women in this space. And if I stand here alone as a person who motivates them, just alone, I'm happy to be that person.
Well, I think that you said it wonderfully. I mean, I think from my understanding of your career, you have been a leader for many, many years, and you've navigated roles from Goldman Sachs to startup as a COO and leading research tech at Macquarie. Hopefully, I said that right. Um,
Macquarie, but who cares?
Macquarie, all right. That's history, right? So, looking back, what was the most defining moment that made you realize that finance wasn't just a job, but a true calling? Because it is a struggle, right, for women. And
I think that I've never been I decided it was a career for me because I was really good at it. And that's the fact of the matter. I wish there were a more subtle or appropriate or polite or just more demure way of saying it, but I started doing it and I was really good at it. And so I wasn't going to get chased off by any men, and I wasn't going to be run out of the game by any men. And when those, or women, by the way, sometimes you can have really vicious female bosses who consider you a competitor as opposed to somebody they're hoping to promote, which is how I think about the world. So you can have it on both sides. It's really not gender specific. It can be both men or women as leaders who are unsupportive. And I think you just make a decision. If you love what you do and you really want to do it, which is how I feel and how I felt at the time, I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And it wasn't going to be a bad manager. It wasn't going to be rumors. It wasn't going to be anything anybody wanted to make up about me or anything anybody wanted to discuss. I was going to do my work and I was going to be the best at it. And because I love it. And it was that simple. And I think if we just accept what we love and enjoy doing and stop worrying about how many people look like us and are like us and are doing the exact same thing, maybe we'll all feel a little bit better. Or maybe we have to have the diversity for first, Rishi. I mean, maybe once we see the equality and we see that there is a real desire and demand for people of different backgrounds to be in the financial services industry. Perhaps that's the catalyst that really brings about change. But what really saddens me and disheartens me is that I've been through so many cycles on Wall Street and seen so many ups and downs. And the one thing that I consistently notice and I consistently can count and do the math on is that in every downturn, more women, based on the overall population, are fired and removed from their position than men.
That's wild.
And I don't mean by a little bit. I mean, there was a period of time in which an entire row at a bank I was working at, which the entire row was all women who, very ironically, all sat at the very end where they had the least access to information. So they put women at the very end of the aisle so they couldn't get information to what was going on inside. And then they systemically went down the row when they needed to do a 30% headcount reduction and just fired all the women. Now, do I think that there were more talented men there than women? Absolutely not. In fact, it was all about who was bros with who. And, and that's why I won't mention the bank, but that's why they continue to fall and fail because the lack of leadership shows. And when you bleed lies like that and do things with no integrity like that, eventually you'll meet your maker. That's just how it works.
Yeah,
The
it's
truth
so interesting you
floats.
mentioned that is true. You remind me of all the DEI conversations that have been happening and thrown around over the last year or so. And it's just interesting how, it's bros that sometimes that can make, especially in an industry like finance, which is notorious for those type of things. And so I just applaud you for standing there, and going through your battled, and you've done so much, and in your early career, you've probably struggled or had professional failures or something, whether at Goldman Sachs, your first job, or otherwise. Like, what is something that still influences you in the way that you lead today that you still remember and learn a good lesson from?
I honestly would take every lesson I learned from almost all of my bosses, with the exception of a gentleman named Andrew Root and a woman named Christine Farkas. I would take their advice and throw it right in the trash bin. I mean, these people end up leaders because of their production capabilities, not because they have any managerial skills. And often what happens is not only do they barely have any managerial skills, but they've been faking the depth of their client relationships as well. And that's how you end up with a really lightweight leader at the deck. And so, I have to say I've thrown almost every lesson I've been given away as stupid, useless, ways to underperform, and ways to become less than, because that tends to be the advice that women are given. Keep it down, let your senior speak, be gentle with your opinion, etc., etc. Completely useless advice. I recommend any woman who is told it pick it up like I did and throw it right in the garbage can. You have an opinion, you have a voice, you have the right to use it, and you should sit at any table comfortably and share it. Because believe me, 90% of the men in the room are never going to think of it. and they just consistently don't. Now, there was one particular moment I remember very, very early on in my career, which set the stage for me for really understanding what Wall Street was. And I had been at Goldman Sachs a couple of years, I want to say. And my manager, great guy, really funny guy, actually. And his name is Ronnie.
Uh-huh.
Ronnie called me in for my first review, and he told me to bring in a box of Kleenex. And I was the kind of kid that had never been to the principal's office and never been in trouble and really didn't understand what that meant, but I thought it was some kind of a joke, um, ironically. So I end up sitting in his office, and he starts to give me my review, and I think it's going swimmingly. And then he says to me, "Here's the thing. We think you're a bit of a maverick." And then the room fell quiet. And I said, "Thank you so much." Because to me, as a 22-year-old, Maverick was the cool guy who, buzzed the tower. And that was awesome. And that's kind of how I looked at the world. But what Ronnie was saying to me was, you're willing to do your own thing. And you're willing to step out and do what you think is right, regardless of what it is that we tell you and want you to do. And that is not our culture. And that's not who we want to be. And we want people who follow everything that we say and listen to every bad idea we have and execute on all of them too. And I think, when you're really young, it's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, oh my gosh, what if he's right? I have too much personality and too much mind of my own. And I look back now, 25 years later, at everything that I've built and the businesses that I have and the relationships that I have that this individual could never touch. Never. I mean, he would never get a phone call from Elon Musk. Never. And you think about it, and it's just like, wow, stick by your guns, buzz the tower. Don't worry about someone else's opinion about it. That is somebody who likes to blend in and is a sheep, not a leader.
So that is something that I think it was a Yeats, which is where I can't remember who the poet was, but the poem goes, "Many people die with their song still inside of them." And what it seems to me that if many people conform themselves to some sort of rubric or societal or pressure from somebody else, and they suppress who they really are, and they miss out on really shining and something that you have actively pushed against.
Yeah, but not always to my favor. I mean, often to my detriment. It is often viewed as too bold, too assertive, too aggressive, and all the other things that women often are labeled as too much of. I think those are fabulous things. If I could get more of them, I would any day of the week. Are you kidding me? Do you have any aggressive, assertive, intelligent, powerful women that I can hire? Please sign me up. But that's not the mentality. That's not the mentality of the world.
Well, I mean, of the world towards women, it sounds like, and
Yeah,
a lot of times too, where the traits that you're describing would be considered a great asset for a man, right? And so, what is the deal with that?
absolutely. I mean, can you imagine if you sat down and told a man that his ingenious ideas and his willingness to take risk and come up with new ways of doing things was maverick and therefore didn't fit into the culture? Would they say, wow, you're so creative and intelligent and capable of thinking of new financial instruments that we could sell to our clients? How can we promote you? It's a very different conversation, and they'd have to really, really think I'm stupid to not know it. Really.
What's extraordinary how much of this subconsciousness still goes through our institutions, our banking institutions, and these very important entities that we all need in our life, and they're still there with these old school mentality. That's wild to me, and I definitely admire you for your.
Well, listen, I really appreciate that, and I think that I am going to continue living in this world with my voice, saying what I want to say about who I want to say it about, factually speaking, and not holding back. And that's just how I I plan to live my life and I do live my life, and I have no interest in anyone who wants to do otherwise.
Life, it's your life to lead
It's my
the way.
life, right? So to speak. And so when I think about my life and what I want it to turn into and what I want it to look like, it isn't somebody else's life. It's exactly how I want it to be. That doesn't really involve following pre-established rules that have been set by people who are long in the grave.
So, speaking of your inherent intuition, which is how intuition is, many people, the definition of intuition I use, it's whole human intelligence. There's the gut intelligence, there's our mental intelligence, and our intuition comes out in a way of combining it. And so, finance often demands certainty and decisiveness, but there's also a hell of a lot of uncertainty and mystery. How does intuition play a role in your life?
I think that, um, because I've been doing this for a long time and I was always a very intuitive person. Even starting as a child, I really understood what was going on around me. There wasn't anything that my parents were keeping from me. They thought they were the tooth fairy and Santa Claus and all that other stuff. And I was three, like, whatever. No, I never really bought into any of that. And I think in the end, it's really just about, uh, letting that intuition and that sense of something feels wrong or something feels really right, and it's a sensation, and you can tell from talking to management teams, and you can tell from people talking working at companies exactly how this experience is going regardless of what words they use. Their body tells you so much, their eyes tell you so much, and their pauses and their hesitations are really telling as well. And so, I do study body language and I do study body language intelligence. And I pay a lot of attention to body language. But at the end of the day, everything is ultimately my intuition that I lead with. And I do think it comes from a combination of places. I think it's my gut, my heart, and my head. And I just consider it all three of those things. My gut, it knows when something's wrong. My heart tells me that it needs to be fixed or it's not going to work. And then my head tells me how or how it can't be fixed. And that's the best way I can think of to do it.
That is probably the secret sauce, I think, and how Sarah Hindlian-Bowler has been so successful in her career. You can't teach that. I think it's just, again, like, with our overall body intelligence, our overall intelligence isn't just coming from our head, and people, especially young people coming out of college, should understand that it's not just a thing here. It's also, you know, overall experience. It's overall what are you understanding in the messaging that you're listening to, and how are you understanding and interpreting that to make your decisions.
Yeah. And, it's been a pleasure for me watching you continue to succeed and, make the incredible changes in the world that you have and help all the people that you have. I think that if I can be even heard by one or two people and it helps in any way, shape, or form, I would be so happy to have spent the time because, my driving passion is to bring about a greater quality in the world.
Well, I think that that's a wonderful value to have. And when you've had like a difficult professional decision, aside from intuition, what we just talked about, what is the way that you frame a question, like internal value, or ultimately guides more of your external outcomes, or and
So I would say that it really does play a role, in what decisions you make. So without using any names, I would say that I recently worked at a large foreign bank, and they had really downgraded to the most junior people imaginable, including in the media department. And almost like a setup. They consistently kept asking me to go onto national television and discuss a company I do not cover, do not have a rating on, and do not have any public disclosures on, which is completely illegal under FINRA law. So I kept replying to the media team, I'm absolutely not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to break the law. I am not going to break the law. You can say it as many times as you want. If you're in a position where a company is trying to force you to do something unethical because they are uneducated, unsophisticated, or unaware, you need to leave and you need to move on quickly before they put you at serious risk of getting into trouble, especially in this industry where people do go to jail for such things. And so when you look at a situation like that and you look at management that just turns away and doesn't really understand, it's because of their own lack of education, their own lack of experience across different fields. And they've excelled at one thing and been promoted for it, but their ability to actually access and understand all the different components of the business is just missing in action. And you can see it in their results. They don't know how to feed everybody that has a mouth that's hungry. And that's a big part of the job. So, I just, at the end of the day, I just follow my instincts and stay out of trouble. And if somebody pushes me to do something that I know is unethical, I mean, in this instance, I actually went to the FINRA website, downloaded all of their guidance on it and sent it ahead to the compliance team and media team. And regardless, they did not care. They ironically believed they had lost their relationship with Fox News. So I called up Jamie Murdoch from my cell phone and was like, hey, did you lose your relationship with this bank? And he was like, who? This is very funny. I mean, this is very funny. He was literally like, who are they? So, yeah, no lost relationships, a lot of noise. And you have to be very smart about stuff like that. Check it. Someone's telling you you're causing damage, go ahead and call the CEO and find out if you actually are, because you're not. You're probably not. And they're just using it as an excuse. And so you have to be really smart and sophisticated about being on top of what rules and regulations apply to you and make sure that you're consistently following them because no one else is going to really have your back.
That makes absolute perfect sense. Wow. Well, two more questions and I'm going to let you go. And I really,
Okay.
again, appreciate you speaking with me this morning
Of
or
course.
this afternoon.
My
And so,
pleasure as always.
so what is something beyond the spreadsheets within the tech sector and coverage, and what's one human skill? And I think we've already touched me. You've already part of going through my questions here, and you've already are nailing them before I even asked them. So I really appreciate that. But what is a human skill that the finance world desperately needs more of, and why?
The finance world needs to spend a lot less time talking to each other. Um, there's something very dangerous about groups of people all generating the same ideas and confirming them with each other and using that confirmation bias to convince themselves that they're correct. It's extremely risky. I see it happen all the time. And I've always wondered at it because it's so illogical. If anything, you're going to make your best money thinking differently, unless you're a momentum investor, in which case you're just trying to jump in and jump out as quickly as the stock moves. And so, for the most part, I think people are really lacking the ability to take a look at these companies and take a look at what they want to invest in and really make a decided long-term healthful decision, not based on indications from any quarter, but based on long-term patterns you're seeing, even as they start to emerge. And it's not that you don't start tracing patterns once they start to emerge that you need to pay attention to. because that's a very important part of doing the job as well in terms of a human skill set is just keeping good notes and keeping on top of everything that's changing and evolving. But there's this missing human touch to the work where you read what your competitors write and they're just regurgitating whatever came out of a call the night before or the day before, and it really doesn't show that they've thought about it, care about it, or have something new or valuable to bring to the table to their client base. And that's actually becomes a real shortcoming.
Wow, I never thought about that. Yeah, I mean, I think with anybody going back, it's fascinating how the finance world, we look at it as a separate type of institution with money and these things, but it's just so human. And people, just like humans, we get caught up in our own little bubble, and then we get we start to lose touch with what's important. And of course, like within finance, then all of a sudden it's not just there's a consequence of losing money, tremendous sums of money.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the consequences are very real, although a lot of investors play with the money like it's not real, but it is. There are genuine consequences for making mistakes. You could really hurt people in their retirement and in their future and and how they're planning to live. It's not a job that people should take lightly, and it's not a job that people should put the bare minimum effort into. And if that's who and what you are, you really shouldn't come into the space. It requires an intellectual and a moral commitment. And the moral commitment is just as important as the intellectual because what you're letting your clients know is your true opinion and you're not holding back, using any information incorrectly. You're really presenting a case as you see it. And people respond to that. They respond very well to it.
A moral finance person. Well, you know, I think I can count a handful of them
Well,
on my
I'd have to agree with you. They do exist.
well, I'm
They
talking to one right now for sure, and
Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate
Thank
that.
you so much. I do pride myself on my morals, but I also don't hesitate to say no to things that I think are risky or unintelligent to do. And I'll walk out of any situation where that's the case. I think it's really important, in particular for women, to learn how to walk out. Let me say this again learn how to walk out. Too many women sit in miserable situations for too long, whether it's their personal life or their career, because they feel the sense of duty and obligation to their families and to their children. And they tolerate BS they should not need to tolerate. And my message to women is leave, walk out the front door. They don't deserve you. They never should have had you. It's a mistake that they got you in the first place. Remove your presence, which is a present, and take it away from them. Go, go. And too many women stick around thinking things are going to change, and they're not. They're just going to get worse. So, single biggest piece of advice is never to be afraid to just take off and go do something else because you sense that something around you is wrong.
Good boundaries is what that sounds like.
Yeah, it
Which
is
which many
boundaries.
Yeah, it's good boundaries to understand your self-worth and not to do things that compromise who you really are just for the sake of something, because nothing's really worth, your soul or your dignity.
No, nothing is. Nothing is even, anything that people want to conceal or keep about themselves, hide or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is people generally know. You're not fooling anybody and you might as well own who you are and be the superstar you were supposed to be.
Well, I again, like the last question I have, which you've already, I feel like you've already mentioned it before, but and if you could tell your younger self, I think about this sometimes, like, what would I tell my younger self? And
Oh, this is
if I
so
could mentor
hard.
myself, uh, first, and when you first got into your career in finance, whether courage, caution, or curiosity, what would it be? What advice would you give your younger self if you could?
I often think about going back in time and advising my little self, who just used to sit around reading books alone, just a huge nerd. And I wonder what I would say to that little girl with her glasses and her books. And I think my advice to her would be that life was going to be rocky, full of ups and downs. People may come and go and disappoint that little girl in so many different ways as she grows into a woman. But I would tell her that she's not going to be one of those people and that she's going to be a woman that stands by her word and stands by her people and consistently does the right thing. And then I would hold her in my arms and tell her it's all going to be okay because I think that every kid needs to hear that.
Wow, that those are very powerful words, and I think with those words, hopefully someone hears them coming from you when they're sort of starting out in their journey into adulthood, into their career, into something as extraordinary as what you have done with yours.
Well, thank you so much. And it's always a joy in my life to get to see you and to get to speak to you and hear what you're working on and neuroscience and law and all the various things you do. And I just, I'm so proud of you for the ways in which you've reached out and helped so many people in the world. And you're so fearless about helping people. And it's, definitely life-changing. So I can only do nothing but be grateful to be your friend, and I will call you my friend in this life and in every other.
Sarah, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you, and as inspirational as you have been and admirable as you are as a human, and oh my gosh, I have
Oh,
nothing
that's so sweet.
but admiration for you, and well, Sarah, thank you so much for meeting with me today. Say hi to Rich for me.
I will,
I'm
I
looking forward to
will.
seeing you guys in person one of these days, really, really soon.
I know, really soon, we gotta make it happen.
We'll make it happen. In life, you just have to just do it,
You
right? So
just do
we'll
it,
make it
you
happen.
just do it. Thank you so much for having me on, and I, really enjoyed myself, so thank you.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Inner Horizons. And so we'll be having this up in a little while. If you have any questions for Sarah, is there any way that if you have anyone that needs to contact you for just some sort of way, is there a way that they can contact you? Are you
Yeah,
open to that?
absolutely. You're welcome to email me. My name is on the bottom of the screen. And it's just S Hinley and no dash Bowler, at amerx.com. And always feel free to reach out to me there with any questions or interest in the industry or pursuing it. And, I'm looking to find more really powerful young women who want to change the world and hope I can help.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great, wonderful rest of your day. And thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you so much. Bye, Rishi. Be well.
Bye.